Hello and welcome to the I Can Do podcast with Benjamin Lee. We're here to talk about tips and strategies to have an I Can Do mindset when it comes to faith, family, fitness, and food. Let's go. Here's your host, Benjamin Lee.
Hello and welcome to another episode of I Can Do. I am Benjamin Lee. Wherever you may be, thank you so much for tuning in, for listening. I hope and pray all is well with you as we are almost done with the month of January. I hope 2021 has been a blessing to you. Yes, there are still moments where I still get a little bit tongue-tied, but what do? Well, you just keep going. I guess I could edit it, but I'll just leave it there and we'll keep going. I think there's something important there, right, about the deception of perfection and how certainly we want everything to be perfect. And certainly we should strive for excellence, but there can be this deception of perfection, and something that it's something that can be overwhelming if not careful. And this podcast really doesn't have anything to do with this idea of deception of perfection, but let's just talk about it since that just happened a moment ago. It was interesting because a few weeks ago when I was preaching, there are two books in the New Testament. The first one that I'm referring to is called First Thessalonians, and the second is called Second Thessalonians. The people that lived there were you could refer to them as those who lived in Thessalonica, the city. And so I was preaching, and I told the congregation to open up your Bible to First Thessalonica. I had no idea what I said because really it should be First Thessalonians. But I said First Thessalonica, and then I said open it up to First Thessalonica. So I said it twice, and I guess I said it with great confidence. I had no idea what I had said. So the next morning, I call it watching the game film, and I listened to my sermon, and when I heard it, I was like, what? First Thessalonica. So it was funny because my wife heard it and she didn't say anything, and other members heard it as well. And so the following week I went back and I made fun of myself in the pulpit as I talked about referring to what I said with First Thessalonica. So what am I saying? Well, I'm just saying, listen, we want everything to be perfect, certainly with our speech, and we need to be careful with our words. But we do have to get comfortable with this idea that everything we do produce may not always be absolutely perfect. And I do think sometimes there can be some benefit of leaving some of those things in. A buddy of mine shared with me a new software that's out there. I need to remember what the name of it is called, but it's really amazing. So even like with recording a podcast, if you want to, you can, it makes like a transcript, I believe, of the podcast. Then if you see some words like ums, so's, those filler words, you can just edit the transcript, and then it automatically edits what you have recorded in your voice. It's so amazing and almost scary, because I do think it will just create this other challenge, this other problem of perfection and what people are striving to go after. And it is interesting how you see videos like on YouTube, and you can tell that they're edited and there's not one single problem. Well, why have we gotten to that point? If you think about just how we talk on a day-to-day basis, I know we want to be clear with what we say. And it was funny too, and evidently I have some issue I need to work on, right? A brother called me, and he was telling me how his wife was listening to my sermon from yesterday, the sermon that I preached on January 24th. And I was talking about John the Baptist. He was the forerunner of Jesus. And I said in the sermon, I said that he was foretold by the prophets in the Old Testament. And just saying that right now, I think I might understand what this sister was saying, because they were at home watching, and they hit the pause button, and she said, "What did he just say? Did he just say that John the Baptist had 4 toes? That he was four-toed?" And I I got a great kick out of that. So I do know there are some words that are certainly hard for me to pronounce. And there's always room for improvement. We should strive for excellence. But I do think there is some danger of this idea of perfection, of everything, perfectly edited, no mistakes, nothing like that. And, we just don't really talk like that. So, you know what I'm going to do? I had an idea for this podcast. I'm going to make it my next podcast. So what I'm going to call this podcast is the Accidental Podcast, because I'm only talking about this 6 minutes in because of what I said earlier at the very beginning, where I kind of stumbled with my words as I talked about 2021. So there's something else with this as well, right? Where it's interesting sometimes how great things can happen when we least expect it. So even when we do make a mistake, even when we do maybe not hit exactly the way that we want to hit the podcast or something that we're trying to put together, if we stay in that moment and have the confidence to keep going, you never know. Some great things may happen. So this Accidental Podcast may actually be a beneficial podcast for you, because I know so many people who do struggle with this idea of perfection. And I'm not, I'm talking about how people put so much pressure on their jobs, and everything has to be exactly right. And it can just become overwhelming. But, maybe there's something to this. When you don't do exactly what you want to do, can you keep going? Can I keep going? Can we get up? Can we even admit and talk about the failures that we've had? Can we share them with others? I shared with my family, and I think this is interesting as well, how some of this just kind of naturally pops up, right? I shared with my family last week a failure of mine at the dinner table. I sat down at the dinner table and I said, there's something I got to share essentially with you, where I felt like I had failed at something and it was bothering me. So we talked, and what was so interesting was it was almost as if it gave permission for other people at the dinner table to start talking about their failures. There's something interesting here where naturally we want to put our best foot forward. No mistakes. Perfection. But what do we do when that doesn't happen? How will we respond? That dinner was one of the best dinners we've ever had. The food was good, but the conversation, the confession was even better. So as I think about this Accidental Podcast, I could have hit the stop button, record again, but you know what? I'm just going to let it fly. Keep recording. Keep moving, keep living, and just keep getting better. Maybe that's what it's all about. What about you? This week, I'm sure you're going to make some mistakes. And I'm not always talking about life or death kind of mistakes or even sinful kind of behavior, but just things that we wish we could just get better. Well, get back up. Keep going. And maybe something great will come from it. Have the courage to share it with someone else. And you may just have the best conversation of your life. Thank you for tuning in to this Accidental Podcast recording for today. If you can, leave me a rating, a review, and remember, I can do, and so can you. Take care, and God bless.